With the release of the Southeast Asian and Indonesian parts of EU5's map, we now have pretty much the entirety of the political map for EU5 as it stands right now, which we're going to show in a few moments. We also have the Culture Wars Dev Diary, where some really interesting new aspects have been illustrated, of course, as well as the new layout of Indonesia. I guess we can go through this first since this is the latest iteration here. We've got Majapahit, we've got Sunda, we've got a lot of nations that exist in EU4 as well in 1444, but the reality is that there's a lot of new ones that we have not seen previously, like Luwu, which is one of the bigger ones. And also take note, Sunda and Majapahit here are really at odds. Majapahit establishing the great empire within this century to come before EU4 starts, and also this is the area where Islam, Hinduism, and other religions will see quite a bit of a struggle to see which one will be the dominant religion. So you have the choice with this particular iteration of Europa Universalis to go down an alternate path. You don't need to go down the Sunni path if you don't want to, of course. Now, to take a good look at the whole map here, yes, I know what some of you thinking. Ludi, there's no Australia, there's no South and North America. Okay, first off, buddy, there should not be any tribes in Australia because it wouldn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in EU4 also. They can just be society of pops, and they likely will be society of pops in EU5 because they're not organized enough to actually be seen as countries. And the same can be said about the Americas. Only exception, of course, is the Aztec lands of Central America and the Inca lands, which we already know are going to be made up because there's no actual information. So whatever is there is 100% fiction, so it doesn't matter. The actual real world here is already displayed. We're going to go through how historical this map is, what should be changed, as well as some of the main features we can expect from this particular political map in EU5, or I'm sorry, Project Caesar. And for those of you that are mad about what I just said, that, oh, Ludi, you know, Inca Empire, great, Aztec, great. Yeah, okay, first off, Aztecs should be basically a city-state in 1337, okay, and I'm being generous here. And again, there's no actual written sources for any of the stuff that happened, so it's all speculation and orally passed down history from the natives, so that was written down hundreds of years later by the conquistadors, so we really don't know what the hell is going on, okay? Now, this is, of course, gonna see some changes before the release of EU5, so keep that in mind. We already know of some changes that have been implemented that are not necessarily on this map, and I have used the Yum77's map as a base, and I added this area because he didn't update it with the Southeast Asian parts yet, unless I just didn't find it. I don't know. If you guys want to get this map from me, I can just put it in the Google Drive and leave it in the comment section. Let me know. I don't think anyone's actually gonna be interested. You guys can check Yum77's post with the older map on Reddit, but if you want it, I can just drop it quickly. Just let me know in the comments. Now, in Europe itself, which of course is going to be one of the main features, there are a lot of nations. I mean, I'm talking thousands of nations, okay? Imagine doing a freaking playthrough with every single one of the nations in EU5. If you did one a day, you would take at least 3 or 4 years to actually do a playthrough with every nation in this game. I'm talking about a proper playthrough, okay? Not just skipping through them. Now, starting from the easiest of areas in the west, we have the Crown of Castile and Aragon, pretty much identical to EU4, but we have the Moroccans that have just invaded in the south to help Granada out and to fight against Castile. Historically, they did get pushed out, and historically, they should not have this much land. They should, in fact, have a significantly smaller area, but anyway. I'm sure that EU5 will start with cores on Morocco from the Castilian crown so they can take it back quickly, I would assume. The French have also seen some changes from the initial release of the French map. We've seen the Kingdom of France, the lands of the Crown of France, better yet, a lot more centralized and a lot more connected than it was initially, as well as there have been some changes around here with the later feedbacks. One of my personal favorite nations, Brandenburg, here is pretty decent. It has an easy target in Lusatia to the south of it, so we can definitely expect some quick expansion paths, if you know what I mean. The Teutons are going to be pretty strong in this game, and I believe that even though it shows here that they're starting war, they're not actually going to start at war anymore, because I think there were some talks on the forums about how they don't want any country to start at war for balance purposes, so we can expect this historical conflict between Poland and Teutons to not start from day one. Might be like an event that triggers the war or something of the sort. I expect the exact same thing between the Byzantines and the Ottomans. They started peace despite the fact that historically they were at war at the start date. It's literally a couple of days after the Ottomans took the city of Nicomedia from the Byzantine Empire, and they were in the process of taking the remaining of the holdouts in the coastline here that the Byzantines had as well. So the Anatolian Peninsula has some big beyliks like Eretnids and a lot of smaller vassal beyliks, vassals of the Sutaids. Karamanids are also going to be pretty powerful. I would say the Karamanids are likely going to be rivaling the Ottomans if nothing else, since historically the Karamanids were the last of the beyliks that got annexed by the Ottoman Empire. That was way later, I think end of 1400s, beginning 15, something like that. Don't remember exactly, but it was really late. It was way after the fall of the Byzantine Empire, for example. Now the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt owns most of the Middle East here, and we do have the remnants of the Kingdom of Jerusalem in Cyprus. That is basically where the administration of the Kingdom of Jerusalem retreated to after they got conquered by Salahuddin's unit. And of course we also have the Knights of Rhodes in this little island adjacent to Mentesids. I feel like in this particular game we're gonna see the Knights play a much bigger role because they have a lot more expansion opportunities compared to EU4, where they need to literally take on the strongest nation from day one if they want to survive, right? So I expect a lot of Knight playthroughs from you guys. More interesting playthroughs are also going to be in Italy, with Verona being one of the big ones. Verona's pretty big because they had a leader that was very expansionist. He should also start at war with Milan and Venice at this start date, but again, I highly doubt that that's going to be the case for balance purposes, so it might alter the future of Verona. We might see a massive Verona as consequence. Similarly, we know that there's a lot of banking nations in Italy that are going to be very different to play with. There's a lot of changes in the east as well that have been done, and I've seen from the comment section again from the devs that Kostroma, Nizhny Novgorod, and these other nations here that do not start as subjects of the Golden Horde, basically they don't start as tributary. It's simply because they are junior partners of Muscovy, so Muscovy pays the tribute, which is why they're yellow, but these guys are under a union with the leader of Muscovy, so they don't pay because Muscovy pays for everybody, or something like that from what I understand. One thing that is a little bit surprising is in the north, the depiction of the Danes is going to be very different. I expect there's going to be some more iterations with the changes to the northern parts of Europe before release as well, since Denmark technically did not exist in 1337. It was split up after its kind of lack of a monarch in 1337. It was a very turbulent period in the Danish history, let's say. That's also when Scania broke away and the Swedes kind of took a little bit of an advantage there for a while. There's also some small things like Genoa owning a small part of Sardinia, and we also have Arborea as a separate part, whilst the other bit of Sardinia is directly managed by Aragon. I feel like that's gonna rebalance the situation in Sardinia as well as in the Italian peninsula itself, because it would give the Genoese, if they play their cards right, quite an advantage to take over Sardinia from the Aragonese, and as consequence maybe even push into Sicily afterward. Now we also have the four major hordes. We have Golden Horde, Chagatai Horde, Yuan Dynasty, and we have the Jayayirids here, which are part of the greater Ilkhanate sort of HRE style international organization. That is basically the Mongol Empire in a nutshell. All of these different khans are subjects in a way of the Khan of Khans, the Yuan Dynasty Khan, which technically rules over the entirety of the Mongol Empire, but of course they have their own independence. They do whatever they do. It's just that the international organization, I'm assuming this is going to be an international organization, might have some special interactions, but it's going to be kind of similar to how religions are, not necessarily a tributary sort of situation. Or maybe there might be some tribute done. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I wish I could ask Paradox that. Japan is fully united because the way they depict the daimyos in EU5 is as extraterritorial countries. Basically, the daimyos are all over Japan, but they are represented as buildings that own other buildings, in essence. That's the daimyo system. It's actually pretty interesting. Curious to see how they're going to depict that. Delhi, of course, is at its zenith, as they say in Paradox Shinto, basically the biggest size it's ever had, and at the point where they're going to start dying off, because just a couple of years later they lose Bahmanis, and then they start losing Bengal, and they collapse into what we have them in 1444, basically a snack for Sirhind. This is also the period when Mansa Musa was the richest man in the world, as they say, because, you know, there's a trillion videos on YouTube about Mansa Musa, the richest man on the planet. So clearly that's true, right? Even though there's no actual evidence of that. I mean, sure, he was rich, obviously. He had an entire empire based on slaves working the gold mines, and all that was going to him whilst his people were starving and getting enslaved. He was rich, that's for sure. Awesome person to look up to, right? But that being said, I'm sure there were richer people in history, and those videos are clickbait with actually no consistency or any proof to back them up. And the Horn of Africa, we have the Ethiopian Empire, which is far from IFAT because of Jew ran to the south to get some pate. Yeah, see what I did there? That's a bad joke. That's really bad. Now, I really wanted you guys to see the religious map mode before we carry on with anything else. Look at that. We got Hinduism all over Sunda and Majapahit. We have a lot of Hindus in the island of Borneo. We have a lot of local religions as well. And then we have some different strains of local religions. Mahayana in the island of Sumatra. Again, a ton of animist or local religions in the Sulawesi parts as well, in the island of Sulawesi. It is just insane how many different religions just 100 years prior to 1444 there were in Southeast Asia and Indonesia. And then how Islam, which right now only we have a few footholds in the northern parts of Sumatra and the southern tip of whatever peninsula this is. Actually, don't know what's the name of that peninsula. That's crazy. Another major thing that was added with EU5 is the culture influence and culture war mechanics, as well as the artists. So these are completely new things, and they are very interesting in the sense that they will have an impact on your nations. We have here the screen for England with what culture they have, which is 1.2 increase from England itself. The Pale in Ireland gives 0.7 and Wales gives 0.19 cultural influence. So this is because of certain cultural buildings, as well as the completion of work of arts by artists. We'll get into that in a few seconds, can also increase your cultural influence. We also have cultural tradition, which is added as a means of defending against another culture in a culture war. So we see right now the cultural tradition of the English culture is 14. It monthly changes by 2.88, and we see a few other modifiers that affect this particular cultural tradition gain for the English. So what is the concept of a culture war? Very simple. It happens when you have two different cultures meeting each other, and you have your cultural tradition which defends and your cultural influence which attacks, in essence. So if somebody has a higher cultural influence compared to the cultural tradition, then they will get negative modifiers because their culture is under attack and the opposing culture is winning. If you have a higher cultural tradition than your cultural influence, then you are winning, so you're getting positive benefits. Because the cultural tradition in English culture is 14, if say you conquered another country, right? You conquered France, and there's a lot of French people with their own culture in your new country, right? So they're part of England now. So your cultural tradition is 14, but if the French cultural influence is 15, then you will get -1 because you're losing the cultural war. So you have to wipe them all out. I mean, what? Who said that? Totally not advocating for cultural conversion here with culture wars. Are you, Paradox? Almost like you want us to convert everybody to our primary culture, don't you? They also mentioned there's a lot of diplomatic actions where having a dominant culture is a benefit for the other country to accept. Plus, it also influences spy networks, higher cultural dominance, better spy networks, basically. Also, it affects if the lands you conquered want to be integrated. So if you have a higher cultural tradition than the influence of the people you conquered, then they will want to be integrated. So you get some bonus towards integrating those areas too. And you can assimilate the people if you have a higher cultural influence than the pop's cultural tradition. Ooh. So that means if you have 5 cultural influence, not tradition, okay, and you conquered Wallachia, say, and they have 4 cultural tradition, then they will start assimilating faster to your culture, whatever that might be. We see here one of the early advances, the patronage of the arts, which allow you to invest in culture, and they give +1 artists. This particular advancement is unlocked in the Age of Renaissance, which is the second age after the Age of Traditionalism. Now, they do mention outside of Europe, there's countries that start with advances already that allow them to invest into culture, whilst the Europeans have to do this particular advance before they do anything, which kind of sucks because Europeans have been building freaking statues and have been investing in culture for thousands of years, to be fair, especially in the Italian and the Greek areas, right? So they should start with this, in my opinion. But I get it. It's a renaissance, rediscovering of the old arts and so on, which is why you have to research it. Now, artists. What are artists? They are characters that will appear if you are investing in culture. They create new art and their skill goes up over time depending on how much money you give them. You can also directly give a lump sum of money, and they can create an artwork for you if you just don't want to get the passive bonus, because it might take a while sometimes to get art out of them. So you see here some examples. Simone Martini, which is a character that is Tuscan from the Papal States. He lives in the Papal States. He's Catholic, 53 years old, male. And we see what kind of arc he's got here. He's got Saint Louis of Toulouse crowning his brother Robert of Anjou. Also, you can invite other artists from other countries to your country, but this has a negative side to it because the influence of the culture you invited him from will be the one increasing if you use them. These are the types of artists. We got painter, sculptor, composer, writer, architect, jurist, scientist, philosopher, iconographer, which is for religions, means the guy that makes icons, I guess, like religious icons and stuff, and metalsmith. If you have metallurgy, I genuinely think that every nation should start with metallurgy because, well, actually, no, never mind. I take that back because North America technically wouldn't actually have metallurgy with it. Now, this is an example of a work of art created. Now, it sees we have the type of art, which is a regalia in the case of Llewellyn's coronet. It has average quality. Origin is in Anglesey and the English own it, and it was created in 1200. So there are works of art already existing at the start of the campaign that certain countries will have, like the English in the case here, and a few other big nations most likely will have. There's also a chance that you will loot work of art when you conquer provinces. You can transfer it to your capital, and you can create a nice museum a few centuries later. So that's a new building, a museum apparently. It presents benefits to prestige and tradition having work of arts in your country. We see here that the Venetians have 4 works of art in Venice, which accrues to about 4% of the artwork in the world. St. Mark's Basilica, horses of St. Mark, Bucentaur, and the 2 icons of the Archangel Michael. And these are the benefits they present: cultural tradition and monthly prestige increase. That's actually pretty cool, not gonna lie. We have another 3 works of art in Westminster, England. We have the Stone of Scone, the Cross of Neath, and the Llewellyn coronet. And again, the bonuses they offer. Look at that. Oh, wow. They also offer assimilation, conversion, and promotion speed. That is freaking huge. So now the question is the bonus they offer depending on the work of art itself, or is there something else that influences what these works of art give you? Like, say, some sort of society value that allows you to get assimilation rather than prestige from works of art, right? Speaking of prestige, this is the prestige of the English. We start with 20.08 here. It has the following effects. It gives cultural influence, skill of new artists, monthly aggressive expansion reduction, reputation, market attraction. Wait, so it's 100 prestige you get plus 5 reputation? That's huge. Holy mother of God. And this is the monthly change, 0.03. It's going up very slow. You're gonna have to have a few battles to get it up faster. That's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.